Welcome to my series where I'm ranking every single Doctor Who companion, all the way from Susan Foreman to Belinda Chandra. But today, we're going to be talking about the 1960s, from Susan Foreman to Zoe Heriot. If you're a long-time viewer of this channel, you know that I have a special soft spot for the 1960s, especially when it comes to Doctor Who. I love the black and white era. I love William Hartnell, I love Patrick Troughton, and I love these companions. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. First up, we have Susan Foreman. Now, I've instantly put Susan in the great category. I've done this for a few reasons. One, she is the OG, she is the original, and I think the idea of her character is so great. In An Unearthly Child, she is this really unusual person and she has this kooky 60s vibe and you instantly fall in love with her. But unfortunately, as the series goes on, that sort of otherworldliness that she brought to the role seems to disappear and we get more of a generic schoolgirl, which I don't think utilizes Carole Ann Ford's incredible acting abilities. I think she plays that kooky vibe so well, and I wish we got more of it. One of my favorite moments is in Marco Polo in the episode The Singing Sands, which is sadly missing. But she has this moment with Barbara where they're looking up into the night sky and she says something on the lines of, "One day we'll understand all the mysteries of the skies and we'll stop our wandering." And beautiful, evocative dialogue like that is what I wish we had more of Susan. But then again, we do get to see a bit more of her telepathic abilities in the Sensorites, and we're reminded that she isn't from Earth. She is not like Barbara and Ian. She is an alien. She's from a distant world, just like the Doctor, and she should have been given as much love and attention as he did. And I think it's great that later on in the classic series, when we have another Time Lord companion in the shape of Romana, you get that more deep storytelling. You get a more interesting otherworldliness, which unfortunately we didn't get much of past her initial episodes. So I think if we had more of that, she would be in the best category for sure. Next up, we have Barbara Wright. And of course, she's going straight to the top in the best of the best. I love Barbara Wright. Why?
But I'll tell you why. Because
I think in this initial TARDIS team, they were really smart about how they structured the roles of the companions. Barbara's strength was that she was a history teacher. And with that role, not only does she give more historical context when they're doing historicals, but she also has a sense of authority due to her role as being a teacher. You trust what she has to say. She has good advice. She is someone who is meant to be a teacher. I love her relationship with the Doctor and how she will tell the Doctor off when he's acting out of line. And she will stand up for herself. She feels like she's being treated poorly by the Doctor, which she was a lot of the time because the Doctor wasn't very nice to Barbara and Ian a lot of the time. And, she really stood up for herself and she said, no, that's not it. And, I think Barbara doing that shapes the role of the Doctor and it eases the first Doctor's character and he becomes a lot more nicer and more friendly. And I think that's down to Barbara's influence. These companions changed the Doctor. And I think that's why Barbara and Ian are so brilliant. And speaking of Ian, next up is Ian Chesterton. He's also up the top. One of the best of the best. He is great. Once again, we're talking about roles in this first TARDIS team. Really important. Ian stands in for the scientific stuff because he's a science teacher. He also stands in for the action elements because the Doctor in these early days was much more slower and less likely to run around corridors and pick a fight with someone, even though the Doctor did bludgeon someone with a shovel. But Ian was there to really do that for the Doctor. And I think he plays that really, really well. And I think William Russell is brilliant casting. He plays the hero so well. And he's so charming and beautiful. And I just love his and Barbara's dynamic. And he's also not afraid to tell the Doctor off when he's gone too far. And he will go in there and he'll be very serious and very straight to the point. You feel like you're being told off because the Doctor is someone who does need to be told off. He thinks he's someone who could just get away with it because he's old and wise, but, he's acting like a child a lot of the time. And you need someone like Ian to come in and say, nah, cut the nonsense. This is what we're doing. Listen to me. this is going to be fine. This initial TARDIS team is perfect. Next up, we have Vicki. I think Maureen O'Brien is one of the finest actors to ever play a companion in Doctor Who. And I know that's a bold claim. There's been many, many actors who are brilliant in Doctor Who, but there's something about Maureen O'Brien who just sets everyone apart. And I think when we come to the 70s, I'll talk about Elizabeth Sladen is also one of those actors. I think the thing that Maureen brings to Vicki is a sense of reality. There's these little moments where when she's scared, she'll choose to laugh and stuff like that. It's an actor's intentional choice. She's adding character into a character that doesn't really have too much depth. Because really, Vicki is there to replace Susan. You know, Susan leaves the TARDIS, the Doctor loses his granddaughter. She is filling in that role. Because even in interviews, I swear Maureen had said something along the lines of like, there was pressure from the production team to say, act like Caroline Ford, act like Susan. And she's like, well, I'm not Susan, I'm not Caroline Ford, I'm not playing the role the same. And she really takes it and turns it into something else, even though the scripts are written exactly the same. And I think her dynamic with William Hartnell feels so sincere, and there feels like there's a real genuine love between the two of them. And I think as well, we need to really give a lot of credit to Maureen O'Brien, because she's the first person to come in and say, I'm a brand new companion. I'm demonstrating that the show has life without the original cast members. Because really, she's defining what a new companion is. You know, she's coming into the TARDIS. She's forming a relationship with the Doctor. We're seeing how the Doctor picks up strays. You know, we're seeing how that works. And I think it's down to Maureen O'Brien's brilliant performance that says, no, this is a show that can change and evolve and grow stronger. So Vicki deserves a best of the best for that alone. Next up, we have Stephen Taylor. I've put him straight into the great category. My favorite thing about Stephen is that the Doctor and him rarely agree with each other. They're always bickering, and I always enjoy when the Doctor and the companion are at odds with each other, because I think it makes for better drama. I think it can get a little bit depressing if it's all the time. You know, when we get into those later stories, you know, the end of the Daleks' Master Plan, the massacre, you know, they're really at odds with each other. They're always fighting, they're always disagreeing, and it can get a bit grating. But overall, I do enjoy their dynamic. There is a sense of real connection. They really do care about each other. They respect each other's positions, even though they disagree with each other. And I really just love that dynamic. And I think Peter Purves does a brilliant job, and it's the reason why he's one of my favorites of this era. And I know what you're thinking, oh, if he's one of the best, why'd you put him in great?
But I'll tell you why.
I think the best category is like an A+, and great is an A. There's got to be that extra little special sauce that puts them to the top of the top. I think he's close to getting an A+, but he's an A. And you know what? This is my ranking. I can do whatever I like. I can't put everyone in the best, or I'm not even ranking. I'm just saying I love everything. No. Next up, we have Katarina. I've unfortunately put her in the not for me category. And this also just comes down to, I think, like a wasted opportunity. Katarina is an interesting companion because, you know, we meet her in the Mythmakers and she finds her way in the TARDIS, and then within a few episodes, she dies. And Katarina's story is really tragic because when she joins the TARDIS, she already thinks she's died because she thinks she's in heaven, because the technological advancements around her doesn't even make sense to her. So she has a really, really sad and awful story. And she becomes one of the early victims in the Daleks' Master Plan, one of the grimmest Doctor Who stories ever. The reason I put her in the not for me category is because I feel like that type of story that Katarina has isn't something we really get to explore too deeply. And it's such a great and horrible and grim idea that it deserved more time. And I don't think we really got it. There's a Big Finish audio where the Doctor, Stephen, and Katarina are taken out of time, and we get to explore those themes a bit more. And it's really, really great, and it makes me like Katarina even more as a character. But ultimately, that's not what we got on screen. So, you know, if I'm judging what we get on screen today, you know, this is about the television show, and I just don't think Katarina was given the time needed to put her in a higher category. But her death is one of the most like brilliant, shocking moments in 60s Doctor Who. So it does deserve a place in the history of companions, but I don't think she really counts as a proper companion to me. Next up is Sarah Kingdom. Speaking of people who aren't proper companions, I somewhat count Sarah Kingdom as a proper companion. And you may be like, Josh, why is Katarina not a companion, but Sarah Kingdom is? I don't know. I just like her more. Look, both of them are real companions. It's fine. I just think Sarah Kingdom is more of a companion than Katarina. Why is that? I don't know. I think Sarah Kingdom is a really great character. I like her character because, she joins the Space Security Service thinking that she's going to help someone, and then she realizes how corrupt it is. And I think that is a great message. I like when people are trying to do the right thing and they fall themselves into the worst scenario possible. And, she gets punished for joining the Space Security Service. She betrays her own brother. She not only betrays her own brother, but she kills him. All because of the Space Security Service, because she wants to protect it. And then she comes to realize what she's done and what the space security really is. And it makes her character feel so much more rich. Her relationship with Stephen and the Doctor is interesting. It sort of simmers out as the rest of the serial goes on. But, her final moments in the Daleks' master plan are incredibly shocking as well. Another shocking departure in the show. And she is excellent in it. I think Jean Marsh is an incredible performer. And we're so lucky as Doctor Who fans to have her in our little show. She is such a brilliant powerhouse. And I love Sarah Kingdom. Next up is Dodo. All right. I put Dodo in the okay category because I feel like Dodo as a character is a little bit annoying, but I think there is a sense of humor to her, and I have a sense of affection for Dodo. The problem with Dodo is I feel like her character changes, and it's not from a sense of this character development. It feels like every writer doesn't know what to do with her. They don't really know what her character is. And so she comes across as a bit stock standard young woman companion. And I don't think there was much love for poor Dodo in the writer's room. But she does have some great outfits, so we love a diva. Next up is Polly. I put her straight into the good category. Love Polly. I love her relationship with Ben. With Polly and Ben, there's definitely a duo. They come as one package, very much like Ian and Barbara. Polly and Ben as a combo does feel like they're trying to reimagine Barbara and Ian for the late swinging 60s. They're younger, they're more hip, they're cool. And I think they're trying to recreate the tension between Barbara and Ian, but with them. And I think they do a pretty good job. I think Annika Wills plays Polly really well. I think she's really sweet. She's so cool. She has great outfits and stuff like that. You want to hang out with Polly. She seems like a really good mate. Polly and Ben are the first companions to travel with two different doctors. They start off with William Hartnell's doctor in the War Machines, and then they travel with the second doctor from the Power of the Daleks up into the Faceless Ones. And their relationship with the first doctor and the second doctor are so different. And they definitely gel more with Patrick Troughton's doctor because, he's younger and he's cooler and he's got the 60s haircut and stuff, they fit together a lot more. But, Polly has a lot of heart and she has a lot of great moments. But, I feel like this era is when we're starting to get into more of the stereotype of the screaming companion. And sometimes Polly isn't served as well as she should have been. But I still think there is a lot of great stuff with Polly throughout her run on Doctor Who. Next up, we have Ben Jackson, played by Michael Craze. I've put Ben in the good category. I've shown self-restraint. I was going to put him in the great category because he's really hot. But I thought, you know what? I've got to stop being so shallow. I'm a professional YouTuber and I'm putting my shallowness to the side. Once again, like I said, with Polly, they're a duo. I like Ben. I like the idea of this sailor companion who just wants to go back to the Navy. It's so weird. And I like their relationship together. I like that when Jamie comes aboard, he's got kind of like a mate to hang out with a bit, because I don't think Ben really gets along with the Doctor, especially the first Doctor, as much as Polly did. Polly and the second Doctor have a real connection and it feels so genuine. Whereas I feel like Ben kind of became Jamie's mate for a bit there, especially in the Underwater Menace. And by the time we get to the Macra Terror, where, Ben becomes susceptible to the mind control and, Jamie's the one who's feeling the loss of his mate more. And I like their connection. And next up, we have Jamie McCrimman, played by Fraser Hines. Jamie's going straight to the best of the best. I think there's something special about when a companion is throughout pretty much the Doctor's entire run. You've got Yaz and the 13th Doctor, they're together throughout her entire era. And Jamie is with the second Doctor throughout his entire era, except for Power of the Daleks. And I think because of the longevity, those characters feel so much more real. Especially when we're talking about the classic series, when there's like 40 plus episodes a season, you really get to know these people because you spend time with them. Even if their characterization and the actual scripts don't give them too much to do, it's the amount of time you spend with someone and you really feel like you get to know who Jamie is. And his relationship with the second Doctor is, I think, the best of all of the second Doctor's companions. They have this real sense of jokiness to it, but they're affectionate and they're not afraid to like touch each other and like hug and do that type of thing, which I think is always nice to have that sort of couple of guys being dudes relationship. It's good to see that with two men who aren't afraid to touch each other because, they're mates. It hasn't necessarily got a sexual connotation to it. And sorry to the people who ship the Doctor and Jamie, that's not an attack on you. Go ahead. I'm happy you love that. But, within the show, they're supposed to just be friends. And that's what I mean by that. I think it's nice to have that. And I think it's a reason why a lot of Doctor Who fans want to have a new series companion that's from the past, because there is a different dynamic when you've got someone like Jamie who doesn't know what a plane is. And, he's learning things as he goes along and he doesn't necessarily understand everything the viewer's seeing. But I also understand for when we're writing 45-minute episodes, we haven't got time to sit and explain what a train is. We got to get to it. We got to get to the plot. Whereas in the classic series, you had time to spend with moments like that. And little moments like that is what makes Jamie shine. And it's what makes his character more interesting. Next up, we have Victoria. I've put her in the good category because I think she has a really strong start to the show. We meet Victoria in The Evil of the Daleks and, we meet her dad and we get to know them both and, the tragic end of her father and how she processes that. And then she seems to find a new father figure in the Doctor. And you really see this shine in the Tomb of the Cybermen where they're having this really connected moment between the Doctor and Victoria where, he's telling her, not everybody gets to live a life like this and how amazing it is. And there's that real moment of like, this is who the Doctor is. This is what the Doctor's about. This is what it's like traveling with the Doctor. And Victoria finds comfort in that, but she's still mourning her father. So she feels more real. But as her journey in the TARDIS goes along, once again, her character starts to become a bit more generic and we don't get much more character development. And this is kind of a recurring theme for a lot of the classic series. A lot of the companions start out strong, but then they kind of end up becoming the stereotypical companion. Their role becomes, what's that, Doctor? And, it's a scary monster. That's what the role devolves into and it's sad. But I still think Deborah Watling as a performer is so sweet and genuine that you really do care about Victoria. You really do like her. And last up, we have Zoe Heriot. I love Zoe. She's great. It's the first time they tried to do a companion who's just as smart as the Doctor, if not smarter. It's something that they could have probably done with Susan, but they just didn't really go down that road. And this type of character can be really annoying. Having a know-it-all can sometimes be irksome. But I think because Wendy Padbury is such a brilliant performer, she plays it with the sense of like, well, yes, of course. As if you don't know that, like it's obvious. And it comes across as really like funny and genuine. Like, she feels like a genuine person, and Zoe is great. And I think it's interesting when I was saying earlier that, you know, all the companions kind of stopped being their characters as their era went on. But I still think Zoe still had moments of coming in with the knowledge throughout her entire run on the show. And they still got to do, you know, the typical companion stuff where she gets to wear incredible outfits and do this, that, and the other thing. You know, she's from the far future, Jamie's from the distant past. You know, having that dynamic is interesting as well, and seeing how they interact with each other. I just really enjoy what Zoe has to bring to the program. And it's also interesting seeing her dynamic with Jamie compared to Jamie's dynamic with Victoria. Because with Victoria, he was clearly a little bit in love with her. You know, there was this sense of, you know, they're both from the past. They're both out of their comfort zone in the TARDIS. What's happening? But with Zoe, she's a bit more closer to the Doctor. You know, they can have more conversations that the Doctor and Jamie can't have. They connect in a different way. And I really enjoy that. So that's the 1960s companions of Doctor Who. There's some really great takeaways here I want to talk about before I talk about my final list. And it's in the 60s, it seems like there's more of an emphasis of, so this companion's from a different time, how does that affect their relationship with the Doctor? You know, if Jamie's from the distant past, how does that affect the storytelling when we're in the far distant future, or even contemporary 60s Earth? Or if you've got someone like Zoe, who's from the far distant future, what is her interactions with someone like Jamie from the distant past? What does that look like? Is that an opportunity to tell different and interesting stories? But compared to the new series, where there is more of a focus with the companion being the main character and seeing the show being told through their eyes, you know, this era was still focused on the Doctor being the main character. After Susan left, I should say. Because I think in the first TARDIS team with the Doctor, Barbara, and Ian and Susan, they were all the main characters. In some episodes, the Doctor was barely even there. He's on holiday, you know. It was definitely an ensemble show when it started off. But as the series progressed, it became the Doctor and his companions. But I'm happy that there was real thought into how these characters interact with the Doctor and how they shape the story, even though I don't think they ever really got as deep character work as they did in that first season between the Doctor, Ian, and Barbara and Susan. I don't think we ever truly returned to making the show like that until we get to the Seventh Doctor and Ace. This is the era when the idea of the companion was established. And I think this roster of companions are brilliant. Looking at my list, I think it's quite fair. I think someone like Barbara, Ian, Vicki, and Jamie are all characters that brought something a little bit extra that not everyone else did. And when it comes down to favourites, I do love all my children equally. But I just think some companions brought something different to the show that puts them in a different rank. But overall, I love all these companions. I love all my children. So don't come in here and be like, oh my God, you hate them. No, I don't hate them. I just don't love them as much as my other children. That's all I'm saying. I'm sorry I have favorites. I gotta rank someone. This is a ranking. This is a tier list, baby. I gotta rank something. We're just gonna sit here and not rank? We're supposed to be ranking together. Like, what do you want from me, baby? So what do you think of my list? Let me know in the comment section below how stupid I am and how you completely disagree with me and that I'm an idiot. And but anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video where I'm ranking the 70s Doctor Who companions, and I will see you then. Bye. Okay. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Snares YouTube channel.